Hello everybody and welcome back to the football betting series here on YouTube, Premier League edition. After a bit of a rough run in November, we did turn it round towards the end of the month. Our monthly record stood at 15 wins, 6 losses with 2 pushes, and a total monthly profit of £140.78. When we add that to the overall record, we now stand at 54 wins, 18 losses with 6 pushes, and a total season profit of £612.76. Now, I've got 3 picks in today's episode, but there is a brief disclaimer. The form and the stats do not take into account the midweek games of Matchday 14 across the 2nd and 3rd of December. So if there's a major injury, major suspension, or a real freak result that comes up which might interfere with my argument with some of these bets, please take that into account ahead of time. Without further ado, let's get into it. Our first pick sees 2nd place Manchester City playing host to 7th place Sunderland, and Man City, they managed to win their most recent game against Leeds. The citizens dominated the first 45 minutes and were well worth their 2-goal lead thanks to Foden and Guardiola. However, complacency definitely crept in for City. As we can see from the numbers, Leeds managed to work their way back into the game in the second period. The away side won out in every major win predictor statistic, so perhaps it was no surprise when Dominic Calvert-Lewin converted following a defensive error, and then the Metcha got the leveller. When his penalty was saved, he managed to tap in the rebound. And it appeared for the longest time that Leeds had completed a successful comeback and rescued a point from a losing position. However, Phil Foden would pop up once again in stoppage time for his second and Man City's third of the game for a 3-2 final scoreline. In terms of form, that win for City means it's 3 victories in the last 4, and when we take a look at their home form, Man City are one of the best sides in the division. They've won each of the last 6 home games, which is actually enough for the number 1 spot in the Premier League when we filter by home form. They host a Sunderland side who showed tremendous resilience in their last match against Bournemouth to win by 3-2. Adil and Adams got the Cherries 2-0 clear within 15 minutes in a first half which was dominated by the away side. Enzo Lefay's penalty in the 30th minute gave the Black Cats something to hang on to going into the second period, and then just a single minute into that second half, Traore levelled the scores up at 2-2. At this point, momentum had thoroughly swung towards Sunderland's favour, and that momentum would carry them through when Brian Brobby scored the decisive goal of the game with 20 minutes to spare. 3-2 to Sunderland, the final score. In terms of form, that comeback win for Sunderland did end a 3-game streak without a win. However, on a positive note, the Black Cats have only lost 1 of the last 6 Premier League games. When we filter by away form, they've won 2 and lost 2 of their last 4 road matches. When we take a look at the head-to-head record, the last match between these sides took place in March of 2017. Manchester City won out 2-0 with goals coming from Agüero and Leroy Sané. Longer term, however, City have won each of the last 6 matches in a row. They're also unbeaten in the last 7 encounters. My prediction for today's game is that there's no doubt that Sunderland have been a real surprise package this year, but they're facing a Manchester City side who are altogether a different beast. Man City are strong at home, and they've picked up points to close the gap to Arsenal. They've also got a great record against the Black Cats as well as at home, so all signs here are pointing to Man City to win the game, and I'm going to be backing them for a full stake here in bet number 1. Our second selection in today's episode sees 12th place Tottenham Hotspurs playing host to 10th place Brentford. And Spurs, they lost to Fulham in their last matchup. Tete and Wilson scored within the first 11 minutes to give the Cottagers a 2-0 lead at half-time. Now, Spurs would get a goal back in the second period when Kudus beat Leno at the near post around an hour into the game. However, it would not be enough and the scores did finish 2-1 to Fulham. When we take a look at the numbers, I was a bit confused to be honest. Spurs won out on every major win predictor statistic, which really does contrast with the highlights of the game. I don't think the numbers capture just how poor Spurs were defensively, and in all honesty they were fortunate to have only conceded twice. In terms of form, that result means that there's no win in 4 for the Lily Whites. They've also lost 3 games in that span. When we filter by home form, they have no win in their last 6, which is pretty dire to be honest. There's no denying that Spurs have been hit with a number of key injuries with players like Solanke, Maddison, Basuma and Kulusevski out, but at some point you have to point to the results that the players are getting on the field and not just blame the injuries and suspensions. It's going to be a long winter for Thomas Frank if this form doesn't change soon. They host a Brentford side who picked up another win at home against Burnley. After a dull first half, the game did burst to life in the second period. Brentford scored first through Igor Thiago's penalty, but this lead wouldn't last long as Zian Fleming converted Burnley's penalty in the 85th minute. However, the Bees didn't settle for the draw, and Thiago scored once again just 1 minute later, with Dango Ouattara killing off the game with Brentford's third of the match for a 3-1 final scoreline. In terms of form, that win for Brentford means they have won 2 and lost 2 of their last 4 Premier League games. Solid mid-table form, which does explain their position in the league right now. Away from home, it's been a completely different story though. Brentford have lost both of the last 2, as well as 5 of the last 6 games away from the G-Tech this season. In fact, when we filter by away form, Brentford would be in 17th and battling relegation. When we take a look at the head-to-head record, the last encounter between these sides took place in February early this year, at the G-Tech. Vitaly Janot's own goal and a Sarr finish late on managed to hand Spurs a 2-0 win on the road. Stats-wise, however, Brentford were the much better side. They edged the game on every major win predictor statistic and would feel hard done by not to have scored at least 1 goal with their 2.06 XG generated across the match. Longer term, that win for Spurs added to a 3-game winning streak over the Bees. They're also unbeaten in their last 4 matchups. My prediction for today's game is that neither side come into this game on a track of reliable form, which makes picking a side a little bit trickier. Part of the inconsistency is due to a lack of clean sheets for both sides, so I'm thinking about goals in this one. Spurs have seen over 2.5 goals in each of their last 3 matches, as well as in 6 of their last 7 Premier League games. When we filter by home form, they've seen over 2.5 goals in 3 of their last 4 matches. Whereas Brentford, they've seen over 2.5 goals in each of their last 3 Premier League games, as well as in 4 of their last 5. When we filter by away form, Brentford have just seen 1 of their last 3 games reach the 3-goal mark, but zooming out a little bit, 4 of their 6 away trips so far this season have seen at least 3 goals scored. When we take a look at their head-to-head record, whilst the last game only saw 2 goals, each of the last 5 matches before that point saw 3 goals scored. Additionally, when Spurs are the home side, each of the last 3 encounters have reached the over 2.5 goals mark, and therefore I'm going to back over 2.5 goals for a full stake in this one. Second selection sees 13th place Newcastle playing host to 19th place Burnley, and Newcastle got the better of Everton in their last match in rather dominant style. The Magpies were 3-0 up at half-time with goals from Thiaw, Miley and Voltemada. The second half, whilst it was more evenly contested with Thiaw's second goal and Kiernan Dewsbury Hall's strike, the final score did finish 4-1 to the tune. When we take a look at the numbers, we can see that Newcastle were good value for the win. They just edged Everton when it came to possession and shots, but the quality of shots was much higher. 5 big chances created in the game and an XG over 2 times bigger than their hosts. In terms of form, that win for Newcastle means that it's back-to-back victories for the Magpies. When we take a look at their home record, Newcastle are fierce at St James's Park, winning each of the last 3 and 4 of the last 5 games at home. The only exception to this being the 2-1 loss to Arsenal. They host a Burnley side who suffered yet another defeat at the hands of Brentford in their last game. Neither side really created much in the first period, with most of the action coming after the interval. However, it was Burnley that were on the receiving end of a lot of this action. Brentford pressing for the win in the game with an XG of 3.06 to the Clarets 0.95. As such, it made perfect statistical sense that the final scores would finish 3-1 to Brentford, with Burnley's only major opportunity coming from Zian Fleming's penalty. In terms of form, that result now means it's 4 losses in a row for the Clarets, and when we take a look at their road form, whilst there is a win against Wolves in the mix there, they have lost the other 5 matches away from Turf Moor, which certainly explains their league position around a third of the way through the season. When we take a look at the head-to-head record, the last encounter between these sides came in May of 2024, when an already relegated Burnley side were beaten by Newcastle. Wilson, Longstaff, Guimaraes and Isaac all managed to contribute in a 4-1 win. Longer term, that win for Newcastle extended a 6-game winning streak. They're also unbeaten in the last 7 encounters with Burnley. My prediction for today's game is that Burnley are really struggling of late, and whilst Newcastle aren't at the peak of their form over the last couple of years, their dominance in the head-to-head record does have me leaning towards them. Additionally, they are very strong at home, and I can see them winning this match in comfortable style. As such, I'm going to back Newcastle to win for a full stake here in bet number 3, and the final bet of today's episode. So there we have it, 3 picks in today's game, all at 3 o'clock on the Saturday, and we're going to start off with Manchester City versus Sunderland. We're going to back Man City to win, odds of 1.24, a £50 full stake to return 12. In the middle of the 3, we've got Spurs versus Brentford, but the odds of the over 2.5 selection have not been released yet. Nevertheless, I will be backing this selection for a full stake. Wrapping off today's episode, Newcastle versus Burnley. I'm going to be backing the home side, odds of about 1.31. A £50 full stake to return £15.50. So, across the weekend, we're going to be risking £150 to pick up at least £27.50. Obviously, this will be higher when we know the odds for the Spurs Brentford over 2.5 goal selection. The question is, will we be able to continue our winning streak from November into the month of December? There's only one way to find out, and that's to tune into next episode. But if you have made it to this point in the video, please drop a like down below and subscribe to the channel for more content. Don't forget to check out the pinned comment for the continental picks, and please make sure you check the dates on them as well. I did make a mistake with the Dortmund versus Leverkusen match, saying it was on Sunday instead of Saturday, so please be diligent down there. And as always, have yourself a lovely day.